Alright, so I hope you guys are doing well. Today we've got a video that I can finally make. It's been a long while since I've made a video like this. I basically just want to talk about Highlander for a bit, and honestly I can't remember the last time I sat down and talked about Highlander, as I haven't played Highlander since his release. I hadn't played Highlander for about 2 years, and as I said right before I began playing him, after I held the poll and had you guys choose what hero I was going to play, I said that Highlander was the one hero I didn't want to win. I'm pretty sure I wanted to play Highlander less than I wanted to play Shinobi, and I went into playing him believing that I wasn't going to have a great time, and today I just want to talk about my time. I'm not going to go into every little thing with Highlander or do a deep dive on his character or anything like that. I just want to talk about my playtime. Now, quick update before we begin. There isn't much going on this week. Today marks the start of another XP Fest. It'll go on through the weekend, so if you got some free time this weekend, now is the time to grind some reps and try to get to your goals before the next season begins. No new content of the week this week, but a few of the signatures are on sale for each of the characters for 3,000 steals, so feel free to check those out. And finally, this is the last week of the Into the Fray Dominion tournaments, and the last one will go down tomorrow if you're interested in that. That's about it for this week. Now, this is just straight up speculation, but since next Thursday is the final Thursday before the big seasonal update, I'm just going to go out on a limb and assume that we're going to get finishers. I shouldn't say that, because saying that before got me to do this Highlander thing in the first place. Also, there could possibly be some info on what's going down next season, including something on the new hero. But we really have no idea, so we'll just have to wait and see. And last thing before we begin, we are about 800 subs away from the Shinobi challenge, so if you watch this channel regularly and plan on continuing to check out these videos, I'd really appreciate it if you sub to the channel. And if you're already subbed, I'd be happy if you turned on notifications with the bell. Now that that is all out of the way, let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Alright, the challenge is finally over. My debts are paid. I no longer hear the bagpipes. I've returned all the kilts I bought, and I took the 59-inch claymore out of my shopping cart. Now, as I said, I thought I wasn't going to have a single good time playing this character. I've always liked the look of Highlander and love his finishers and design and voice lines, but I could never really get behind the whole two-stance thing. When he released, I thought it was interesting because it is. I never really liked the idea of playing with it and using it, and literally avoided the character because of it. It just didn't seem like my type of thing. And picking him up, I realized that it wasn't too bad, and over time I started to like the whole thing and could sort of understand why someone would like it. After a few games, I became much more comfortable hopping between the stances and using each as well as I could. Sure, I made and still will make plenty of mistakes mechanically, and will sometimes avoid using some of the interesting things you can do with Highlander because of that. But over time, using Highlander gets easier, as with every hero. And as I said, I started liking it and even had fun, depending on who I was going up against, of course. I'm all for the testing grounds changes and reducing the amount of damage dealt in this game, but currently it feels really good to just delete someone when they decide to play your game and they don't have a dodge attack. It's satisfying to land a few crushing counters in a row, or to smack someone with a chain top heavy if they allow you to. It's really nice to dodge 3 attacks in a row while in offensive stance and kick your opponent after they whiff. There's fun to be had with this hero, and despite his problems, players have found out how to make him work. Go watch a long time, really good, experienced Highlander player. It's a lot of fun, and they work with what he's got. This hero is really polarizing. That isn't the word I'm exactly looking for, but I'll use it. There are those who swear up and down that Highlander is broken or extremely easy to play, and then those who think that Highlander is way too weak and desperately needs some love or rework. The discussion around Highlander is always interesting. On one side, there's people saying that Highlander doesn't bring much to the table, and on the other, they're saying that he doesn't need any work at all, mainly because he can land 40 damage attacks somewhat easily. No matter what side you're on, I think we can all agree that we'd like to see Highlander receive some more work one day. I'd actually like to see him be worked on sooner rather than later. Of course, after whatever heroes UB is already working on. I'm not sure if I'd prefer to see a rework or just serious improvements to both of his forms. And when I say rework, I mean a rework from the ground up, as in completely scrapping the character and reworking him. If they were to rework him, how far would they go? Would they remove his 2 stances or forms? I really wouldn't want to see that. Or would they just seriously change the way they both work? I wouldn't want them to remove the stances because that's a part of his identity. It makes him unique, as no other character has 2 entirely different stances that behave this way. The closest being Shaolin's key stance, but I see that more as an extension of his kit rather than being a totally separate form. But if it needed to be done and it works for the better, it is what it is. Now, even though there were times I had fun playing, there were times that I didn't, and there were plenty of times that I wish Highlander had options to deal with things. I think the first thing that bothered me the most about playing Highlander, and something that I was constantly reminded of, was rolling. I always knew that you could just roll away from Highlander once he got into offensive stance if you wanted to just stay away from whatever he had going on, mainly the kick toss mix. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I've done it plenty of times. If I'm low health, even if I'm full health, just finished a fight against someone else and Highlander comes glassing his way near me, I'll just roll away. There were some games where I'd face players who knew that they should just roll rather than playing Highlander's game, and they just keep rolling and rolling and rolling. And this isn't something that happens to only Highlander, of course, but it really made me wish that Highlander had a simple way to catch rolls. Something like allowing him to get to caber toss from a kick or something like that. Highlander's opponent doesn't need to deal with his offensive stance if they don't want to, at least in a 1v1 setting. Offensive stance as a whole has always been a bit confusing in my eyes, as to many others, as one of his strengths in offensive stance is a defensive maneuver in his dodges, and with those dodges being so good, Highlander can be a bit turtly even without his guard, and can make it feel as though he has 40 damage dodge attacks with a nice dodge into a kick, which can be frustrating to people, and it isn't fun or engaging to go up against. And against the right opponents who know how to deal with offensive stance and keep you out of it, it isn't fun for the Highlander player either. Then you get to thinking about it, and the offensive side of his kit doesn't have many options and has a tough time against half the cast anyways. And those few options are really hard hitting against those who don't have a way to deal with it and chose to play Highlander's game rather than rolling away or avoiding it outright. Or of course if they're out of stamina where they can't roll and are forced to deal with whatever Highlander is going to throw at them. Defensive form is Highlander's default stance. He gets his guard, access to his slower lights with superior block, and armored opener and chain heavies. The lights and heavies have their uses. Chained heavies can whack people if they allow themselves to be hit or try to attack you as you enter offensive stance. It may have some counterattacking properties, but that's about it. Somewhat recently, he had his charged option select removed also. I'd like to see the armor start a little bit earlier for those neutral heavies at least, but I prefer if defensive form had a little more offense to it, something to allow him to get into offensive stance while on the offensive and give him a bit more to do. If that means testing out enhanced lights, go for it. Or I saw a suggestion saying allow him to enter offensive stance from defensive heavy finishers, which I think would be nice. I wouldn't mind seeing a few smaller changes in the meantime if they needed to take a while with Highlander, like they're doing with Centurion. There would of course be some give and take with Highlander. I don't think there's much of a need to talk about damage anymore, as the testing grounds changes are already taking care of that. But if they don't go through, I'm sure that his offensive stance heavies would have their damage reduced. Defensive stance top heavies would probably have their damage reduced. We'd probably see his offensive dodge recoveries increased. I'd like to see something like his soft feinted lights from offensive stance heavies be tri-directional, you know, be allowed to go in any direction rather than soft feinting in the same direction. I'd like that, especially if you could swap targets, or allowing Highlander to hard feint his Celtic Curse or speeding up his neutral light. I know there are people who want it to remain in its current speed because of its superior block window, and then they'll look at heroes like Warlord or Valkyrie, but we've got Black Prior Lights in the game now, which are 500 milliseconds and have the same superior block window, so why not speed it up? You could also reduce the crushing counter damage to match as well. Now, I said before that almost all the heroes in For Honor are relatively easy to learn when comparing this game to more traditional fighting games, as you can learn how to play a hero and get used to their tools pretty quickly, especially a lot of the more basic characters. Highlander is easily one of the most difficult heroes to learn. Well, I guess the word I should use is master, and I use that word for the lack of a better term, so I'm using it loosely, because there is a bit more of a learning curve with this hero, at least when it comes to mechanical execution. You're pressing more things with Highlander than with other heroes, which is fun to some people. I'm really hoping that Highlander gets some love one day. I want everyone to be able to enjoy his inclusion in For Honor, whether you're playing him or on the opposing side. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. I've talked long enough. I would probably bust out Highlander from time to time because, as I said, I sort of like playing him sometimes. This whole thing has pushed the Vikings further ahead in my faction rep counts. Now the Vikings have just about half of all my reps, with Knights being in second place, Samurai in third place sadly, and then of course the Wuling came in last because, you know, they're the newest. The wait is almost over. The wait is almost over. This season released on February 6th, which wasn't that long ago, but without a new character felt like a lot longer than that for me, and I'm just glad that we're almost in the next season, which is just 2 weeks away now. Anyways, as usual, I do want to hear what you guys think, so be sure to talk to me down in the comments about anything we talked about in this video. And as always, if you liked the video, feel free to leave a like and sub if you're new, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.